After beating Man City, should Arsenal now be favourites to win the league? No. Okay, but seriously, on Sunday we saw the first clash of the season between Man City and Arsenal, and with Arteta's men coming out on top against Guardiola's side for the first time in over 3 years, it does feel like we may just have seen a turning point between the two sides, with the Gunners looking dangerous. And so with all that being said, here are 5 things we've learned from the Community Shield final. Firstly, Man City are in fact not actually unbeatable. I know, groundbreaking theory I've just put forward, but believe it or not, 11 men running around kicking a sphere filled with air can actually lose occasionally. However, you see, just a couple months ago, even before they'd won any of their 3 trophies, Man City did look absolutely untouchable, battering any team that came their way. From Bayern Munich to Real Madrid or Man United to Arsenal, even the biggest and best sides in the world struggled against them, and that was down to a couple reasons. Firstly, for years Man City's biggest problem was defending transitions, with fast wingers particularly causing huge issues getting in behind their inverted fullbacks with pretty much a free path to goal. However, as I'm sure you'll all know by now, last season Pep changed something which gave them an advantage in these situations. Instead of using 2 inverted fullbacks into midfield, Pep Guardiola inverted just 1 and eventually didn't even invert any fullbacks, pushing John Stones up into midfield, with the so-called fullbacks actually being both centre-halves in Nathan Ake and Manuel Akanji. Now this video isn't going to be an analysis on Man City's team last campaign, so I'm just going to summarise here and say that these changes made their defending in wide areas much better, and when teams tried to hit Man City on the break, they'd be met with the structure and personnel much harder to overcome. But on the weekend, Arsenal showed that this City side can be beaten in a way that actually links on to the second and third things that we learned, which is that Kai Havertz could be a fantastic number 9 and that Declan Rice and Jurrien Timber are potentially era-defining signings. Now let me first cover the elephant in the room. Yes, Kai Havertz did play as a number 9 for Chelsea. Yes, it wasn't successful, and yes, he's only played 1 competitive game there for Arsenal. However, as some of you may know, I actually advocated for Havertz to play striker for Potter's Chelsea given the qualities he possesses, some of which have already improved massively under Mikel Arteta. Firstly, to state the obvious, Havertz has an enormous frame at 6'4", with the potential to be a physical monster, something that was underdeveloped at Chelsea despite the fact that they often relied on him using his physicality. And with the rise of technical diminutive forwards in the 2010s and physical beasts in the last few years, Kai Havertz could be a sort of in-between man who Arsenal can use in big games to either link up with other players or play off the last man and try to get in behind. We've seen complete forwards like Harry Kane and Robert Lewandowski see huge success, and Kai Havertz could be the next in line. After all, we have seen Arsenal turn unfancied prospects without a real position into world-beating strikers. Moving on to Jurrien Timber and Declan Rice, the reason I've called them potentially era-defining is not because I think they're necessarily going to be the best players in this Arsenal team, but more because they could be the final pieces of the puzzle which help Arsenal kick on and become the best team in the country. A good example to look at would be Man United in the 90s, where despite the fact that Roy Keane and Eric Cantona weren't necessarily miles ahead of the rest of their squad in a footballing aspect, it was their signings that helped the club kick on and win trophy after trophy. Declan Rice is undeniably an upgrade on Granit Xhaka in pretty much all aspects, and Jurrien Timber provides Mikel Arteta with an opportunity to make them far more defensively sound in big games, whilst also maintaining the build-up ability of someone like Zinchenko. And if you cast your mind back to last season, it was Zinchenko losing a 1v1 against Liverpool which would be the catalyst for the Gunners' collapse. However, if you were to put Timber in that same scenario, I think it would have come out a whole lot differently. And in a clip that's gone viral following Sunday's Community Shield, we can see how Declan Rice can be the difference in big games, where after dispossessing Bernardo Silva, Arsenal now have a proven cheat code in defending transitions, and even more impressively, he's also able to be the man to kickstart that situation into an attacking one, an example of which being that incredible goal in the Conference League last season. And so to make that clear, do I necessarily think that these 2 signings are the best players that Arsenal now have? No. But can they be the 2 that finally push Arsenal to the next level? Absolutely. The fourth and probably most undeniable thing that we've learned is that social media's overreactions are going to go absolutely nowhere. From people calling Pep a genius at 1-0 for subbing Haaland off for Cole Palmer, to others saying he was a fraud just 20 minutes later after Arsenal equalised, football social media hasn't changed at all over the summer. Now, to play devil's advocate, one thing I will say is that as fans we do all get caught up in the heat of the moment, and given that social media is really just a place for us to vent frustration, I do think people often take what's said far too literally, but at the same time we should all remember a few things. Firstly, footballers are human too, and so tag them in hundreds of posts slagging them off is certainly not on. And secondly, just as I mentioned earlier, social media really isn't that important. And so if you do see someone slagging off your favourite player, maybe just ignore it and move on to the next post. And finally, but arguably most importantly, this is going to be a great season. In just one relatively tame game, we saw hundreds of ups and downs, with yellow cards, emotional managers, great goals and less great goals. And given that the likes of Man United, Chelsea and Spurs have also improved, I think both the title race and battle for Champions League football could be even more fierce than ever. That being said, I do feel like we say this every year. However, what sets this season apart from any that came before this can be seen in this image, where if I zoom in it says to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Links to all my socials will be in the description. Thank you and goodbye.